Hello, Holy Emmanuel. Welcome. Blessings to all, indeed, all who are watching. Hey, how you doing? Of it, because this one is gonna try and encapsulate a lot of different things that I've been looking at this current month. A lot of things have started up already. We have the current season getting us ready for Christmas, and the season for entertainment is non-stop. So where have I been and what have I been at? I've been at up to so much, basically consolidating this 2024 to being bad, even though some might say the good, the bad, and the ugly. But speak for yourself. I can only speak for the pretty, the beautiful people like yourself who keep watching the bold and the beautiful, the brave, the guts, the glory that we bring into the interaction on the internet. And it was with guts and glory that the 80s brought me into the music scene. And I'm going to talk about the school years, but I'm going to leave some of that out and put that into one separate episode or a couple of separate episodes about the school years, which would really include a little bit of the 60s, a lot of the 70s, and a bit of the 80s. Because in the 80s, I continued in education through college and through universities and different institutions that were then opening up. We had Sadaka opening up round about the time of me leaving school, so there was opportunities there in the community, and I give thanks for the opportunities that was given throughout Sheffield, EITB, which was another training environment that I learned a lot of my skills in, not in the music, but more in to do with hands-on, doing physical work, which men were really doing in the 80s, the 90s. Men's work with your hands, working in the steel factory. So I was trained to work in that environment, and also did building work, did a lot of engineering degrees and things like that that helped me then to learn about how automotives work and how things work, motor engines, building work, construction work, how hydraulics work, how electrical components work, how electrical circuits work. This was a varied learning path that I was on, and it continued even when I went into the youth work. So I never stopped learning. So that's why I'm going to condense that into, you know, where it's supposed to be. But I'm going to talk about the 80s and how I then got into the music, and that was after leaving school and during school. There was things happening. We talked about the two-tone, the rude boy scene. I was very much part of the rude boy scene, the mod scene, moving around with those sort of people. Give me a lot of respect for fashion and for art, and fashion and art, which was something that was being experimented with, especially by the punk rock scene. And the punk rock scene carried on growing, and you could say it morphed into the rock scene. But the punk rock scene was really uh, a rebellious time for a lot of the youths who were around, and a lot of them were my friends, and they were going through similar things in the culture, the youth culture. So we all share the same sort of dreams, aspirations, fears, whatever our background is. So I'm not going to look at color alone. I'm just going to look at your background. When you at 15, 16, it's not going to be much different if you're living in the same area, regardless of what your parents' income is, especially at those times, because there wasn't a great deal of work differences going on out there. There were people who were engineers, and there were also architects and people who were draftsmen. They were the sort of really higher level in Sheffield, and we had a lot of silver work and steel works, which I got into straight after school. So this led me into looking for alternative ways, which probably more went on in the 90s. But during the 80s, I was still very young, still wanting to work, and also wanting to earn enough money to buy the things that, people were looking at that time: cars, jewelry, houses. All those things were available to us. So yes, I obviously got into music through the need of wanting to find something else to identify with, and music always seemed to be my go-to place, especially through my early teenage years, adolescent years. I found myself listening to music more, listening to the lyrics, understanding the lyrics a lot, immersing myself in the culture, even learning about pop culture, learning about reggae culture, where my parents had come from, learning about it in a way that not many people would expect somebody of my age to want to explore. But I wanted to explore it as a journalist, which I had aspirations in that field. I had aspirations in writing and writing books. But yeah, blah de blah, leave that out. But yes, music, poetry work hand in hand. So the lyrics I was writing already at home. Me and my younger brothers and older brothers would sometimes listen to music that our parents had got in the house. They had a lot of records, a lot of albums, a lot of Barry White, a lot of stuff you hear on my radio show. So if you want to hear the stuff that I listened to growing up, listen to some of my radio shows, some of my podcasts. You can hear the different diverse artists. And this led to us experimenting as youths with music. We had a music centre, even though we had a gram, we still had a other way ourselves, having a microphone, holding the microphone, speaking patois, toasting. As young kids, we did that. My friends would come round, we'd all have a little young children's party on our own. It allowed, water and pop, things like that. We would have those things amongst ourselves. This is something that's, I think, is very important, that we understand that kids will always have their own world within the adult world, and we as children, we were developing a world around that. And this also sort of reminds me of conversations I had growing up, and conversations I still remain to have with people to this day about what other things that occupy children. And a lot of the times it's the simple things that us as parents, or you as a parent, or when you was a child, remembering what were the things that you like to play with. And it would have been things like the cardboard boxes and the sort of things that we saw on Blue Peter, Magpie. So I've got to mention those programs, because a lot of the things I didn't always mention in the other programs about the 70s and the 60s. They happened in the 70s, but we forget that they happened. We forget that we had platform shoes. Everybody wore platform shoes in those times. And we had the afros. A lot of people had afros, and we used afro combs. Everybody had an afro comb. There were afro combs that were red and green. A lot of those, I remember a lot of those that you could fold up, and you had the ones that were obviously being carved, and then they came out with a lot of plastic afro combs. But they were huge. You had the metal ones, and they even started to consider them as weapons, as they do with everything that becomes a part of culture. Even yo-yos, sometimes a lot have been looked at as weapons. Pogo sticks have been looked at as weapons. Hockey sticks were used, in some gang cultures as weapons. And we're not going to dwell on that, because we can also talk about what happened on the screens that we saw. We saw the Bells of St. Trinians. These were programs that were very, very popular. The Venn Street Mob, very, very popular amongst the youths, very, very popular amongst myself. Grange Hill, it had a great impact on us at that time. And this program has grown with us. We've seen some of the characters then come on to other programs that were on Grange Hill when I was a teenager. So we then saw some of the characters on EastEnders. Some of you will remember some of these characters. So this is why I can always go back throughout the years while I'm going forward, if that makes sense. That's why this is going to be quite long when we talk about the years and my journey, because my journey didn't just start at one place and then stops here. It's going to continue past here. And it didn't just start at my birth, it started with my parents, and it started with their parents before them. So those years are important to me to know about, and for me to express my devotion to my parents and to my family is one of the greatest gifts that I was given, that I can articulate words. So I've always got to praise those that came before me, those I've worked with. So this program's going to talk about some of that as well. So we're going to talk about how I first got into the music. I talk about how Me and my brothers, we would practice, we would write stuff. This led me to want to be a rapper, because then what came onto the scene, there was a program that used to come on television that was running a long time, from the 70s. If you remember some dancers called Pan's People, then you know the program I'm talking about. That was Top of the Pops. And on one particular program that I didn't see at the time, but it was sort of a really hyped up after it came on, was a particular band that came on that day. The band was called Shalimar, and they had a particular dancer or a singer in the group, member of the group, called Jeffrey Daniels. And what Jeffrey Daniels did on this particular episode of the very popular music program Top of the Pops was to body pop. I'm going to say that again. The first time on British television that body popping was done was by Jeffrey Daniels, and everybody can flag up that particular program and look for when the first ever showing of a moonwalk was actually done. It was on that program before Michael Jackson. This was when it happened, and this was well recorded. It was recorded on BBC. There was nothing ever done before that. I'm not saying that we didn't have dancers who did the early versions of bebop or the Smurf or moonwalking or the worm, whatever you want to call it, electric boogaloo. These were all dancers from early 40s in America. But Jeffrey Daniels, who was American himself, was in the group Shalimar, British, well, recognised as a British group, but they were a really American group, Shalimar, very, very popular in the jazz funk era. And that was an era that had kind of whizzed past us. I whizzed past talking about that because it came and went in almost a flash. That was part of the British culture. And we also had Northern Soul, which was part of the British culture. Northern Soul came from Motown music. Can't remember the particular guy's name who really bought the Motown from the place that he went to a warehouse in America, bought all this unsold vinyl from this particular warehouse in America, and he was importing it into the UK and into Europe. And this was when Motown, big artists, were having bigger deals. So Diana Ross, the Marvin Gayes, they were all being signed to bigger deals with Motown, getting big money for Motown. But there were other artists like Edwin Starr in particular who hadn't broken out major in America. But soon as this music reached the shores of the UK, they started becoming popular. Edwin Starr did a song, War. This song became very popular in the northern clubs, Northern Soul reunions to this day. And we have a lot of Northern Soul reunions in Sheffield, Rotherham, really Motown, but it's called Northern Soul. So I just had to mention that. Jazz funk was the style of music that my older brothers were listening to. It was what the roller skaters was listening to. It was very, very popular in the UK, but it was superseded by funk. Funk alone stood its ground because funk was here before jazz funk. Funk was here before most of the newer styles of music that we have now. Roundabout when disco was at its heyday, funk really came back into full force, where the beats were more funky, they were more chunkier, they were picking the bass, it was using picks to play the bass. Melodies that they play in disco, it doesn't mean so they don't pluck in disco, but they really give you the funky strut in funk music. And this was what brought out hip-hop, because when Jeffrey Daniels did this particular move, he was from a jazz funk group, but they were mixing it. They were British, loved by the British, as were a real thing. There was a lot of British soul music, a lot of music like the Drifters, the Spinners, who were very popular with my parents' age, and we would listen to these groups. The Four Tops, they were all still being played. And funk and hip-hop were really end-to-end. Funk had drawn out to its conclusion in like the 80s, where they were struggling for newer ideas. And when hip-hop took on the funk and they took on a bit of the disco, they took on a lot of the jazz. In 80 years, when the producers became a little bit more proficient, this was when I got into this music so deep because it hit us all, the whole of England, Europe, with an impact. It had been in America for near enough a decade, from 1972, the first hip hop renditions were being put together. And I've done an episode talking about this, and I've talked about the philosophy that I have. As hip hop developed, I was developing my skills as a rapper and as a dancer. I did a lot of body popping exhibitions at that time, got to travel throughout Europe with a crew of people who were doing great things, street crew, and I still keep in contact with them. And they know who they are. We're great friends and will always remain to be great friends because of that time that we spent together and the camaraderie that was built up. And the time of the music was so deep, it was a culture that was embedded into us from at that age, and we was all gifted enough to be able to earn money. Let's be honest, that's what we were pulled into the corporate world at a very early age. I was pulled into the corporate world of the understanding that there's bigger entities, bigger companies that will work with you just because they see your talent. And this continues to this day. I've been able to invest back into young people. And what I learned from that stage of growing up is that the young energy is what really drives the music. The older people, that's the ancient energy, the ancient love, and the ancient sort of wisdom that we bring to the table is the foundation, where we bring the roots, we know the history, we can talk the history, we were actually there at the club, so we can sort of direct sometimes, but that shouldn't stop us from or put us in the way of other people. We should be stopping them from getting forward, because I was always being helped by older people like, in particular, like Austin Grant, who is prominent in my story because of what he created during the Music in the Sun era. And I'm going to continue to sing praises to Austin Grant because unfortunately he passed away. RIP to Austin, and my condolences to his family. The Austin that I knew was a very positive person, give me some very strong opinions and knowledge of the industry, because he obviously started working in Sedaka Studios, which was then called Bob Marley Studios at the time. And people have got to remember that everything that started during Music in the Sun started at the back of Sedaka in a small car park. I was part of seeing this being put together, the ideas that Austin had and how he incorporated not only local artists in all fields of the industry and of industry. He incorporated international recognition for this very same city that we all live in and reside in, who are watching this. There's people outside of Sheffield who may not know Sheffield, but they may know about Music in the Sun. They might not have even known that it was Austin Grant who was one of the great founders of that organisation. We all have our opinions, and I'm only going to give you my opinion of how I saw that event and the organisation of it. So Music in the Sun was a very positive thing for the city, not only for the youths. We all look forward to it, and it was run year on year out through Sedaka Studio. And the artists that he had, I saw many artists, and that was because at that time me and a group of friends or musicians, Prento Judah, Don Carlos, were given space in Sedaka Studios, a smaller room, because we requested or asked Austin personally if we could record stuff. Austin listened to our stuff, liked it, because we were doing stuff at home. Prento had equipment we could record on that he borrowed from Godfather, Derek, who run Trojan Sound at that time. And we were recording stuff at home, dub plates, different skits, radio, jingles, anything like that that we could put on, even onto cassettes, play them in our cars, pass them on to our friends, circulate them in the area. It was sets from your booth. It was a great business for me. So I was recording my own stuff, and then I got this opportunity to work in Sadaka Studio with Prento in the smaller studio. This led us to then develop our own sound, writing songs on the fly, recording it on the fly, mixing it on the fly. You know what that means? That just means there and then. Just mix it, record it, everything's done on the same day. You've got your team of people, one person has a particular job, you have your particular job, other people have particular jobs. No arguments about that. If that person's not good at the job, you learn to live with it until you get somebody who is better than them. But when you're all coming up together, respect his craft. You might not be the best in the business and might not be able to get it, so you sound like that guy. you sound like these guys you hear on record, but this is your friend, you're working together. So these guys, we built up this camaraderie, and Austin heard this. And I have to salute Austin for this, because he did give us then the opportunity to work in the major studio, which is a big studio which had a massive desk. It had big artists had worked in this studio. We'd seen artists come and go, pass through the studio. Sanchez, Frankie Paul, Shabba Ranks, Ninja Man pass through. We've seen people, Buju Banton, pass through studios and do their stuff. We're locked out, but these people are working in the studio. Yami Bolo, they work in the studio. We as artists who are in the vicinity are not always able to go in. Sometimes you're able to go in, but there might be a time when there's too many people in the studio, not doing anything. It could be all smoking. That's not a healthy environment, and some artists want to be closed off from artists. So there were times when we only saw them pass through. There was times we sat in these events, because that's what they were. They brought in their entourage, the drinks, they'd be partying. And this is what happens in the music industry. So when people are sort of confused about the party lifestyle goes on consistently, persistently in the music industry, because it's part of that. We do celebrations for people's birthdays, we do celebrations for events, for anniversaries, for centennials. So we're always privy to seeing other people enjoy themselves, and sometimes you have to detach yourself. That's what I had to learn to do, and I didn't learn to do it in the early days. I was caught up in it just like everybody else, the drinking, the alcohol, the women, the debauchery, everything. And that's what Jamaican upbringing can give you. It gives you the born truth. So we always had this in the back of our mind. We knew that at certain times things, enjoyment, weren't to be had consistently. Just imagine if you're given sugar all the time, sugar, something sweet all the time. That is good. I'm trying to make these stories as interesting, filled with love, and as much understanding for myself, and hopefully that you understand that, because this was how I understood things. I'm not expecting that any of these things relate to you, because this is my journey. So we're talking about my journey. People watch this, and I'm thankful that people watch it. I know they're watching it in the thousands now, and that's good, that's great, because we're just going to get better at this and hopefully bring out more stuff, and not just stuff personal. I'm going to mention people's names, I'm going to mention some of the schools, I'm going to mention Earl Marshall, I'm going to mention Firth Park, I'm going to mention Hindhouse, I'm going to mention Aberdale's Mearsbrook, I'm going to mention some of the areas, Manor, I'm going to mention Waltheoff, I'm going to mention all these different schools in the context, I'm going to mention different cities, even Nottingham, London, Birmingham, Leeds, because it was all relevant to my journey. Glasgow, Edinburgh, all relevant. Jamaica, Kingston, Mobay, all relevant to my story and to my journey. US, New York, Australia, Africa, these are all places too, and they're all places I've got contacts, and I'm working within those areas now. Germany, great contacts I've picked up from there. So I've travelled with my entourage and with my family, and also let my music travel. So my music's traveled and hit a lot more than I am physically able to travel, and I'm grateful for that. And the message that I continue to work and weave into these videos is about the real principles you have to stick to. My early principles I carried on into my late career, and that's why I'm trying to take my time to get into these stories. Let you listen if you want to. If you don't want to listen, swipe off, because I know people are listening to this stuff. There are people who are taking little bits of this because it's educational, it's entertaining. People talk. Oh, I try not to preach. So no, there's not going to be no telling you must do this and you must do that. You do what you want. I'm doing as I want right now, and that's on here is to give an account of life in the 70s, life in the 80s, life in the 90s, life in the 2000s for a black male that I am. I can't give the story of life for women. I can give some of the story because some of my life includes female interactions. A lot of that went on because in the music industry we work with female and we see them equal. There's no misogynist within my circle. Whether it exists within a male dominated world, of course I accept that, and I've had to challenge some of my own beliefs and some of my own, definitely how my attitudes are towards women. We as males need to look at that, and in the music industry we have a lot of this coming under scrutiny at the moment, particularly with P. Diddy. I'm just going to give you my short version of that. And I told you this when the allegations were surfacing or resurfacing, as I will put it. They were resurfacing because this was information that had been known for many years. Many people had talked about it. Some with credibility, some with less credibility. This is how it works. If your credibility is low, you can't really talk. You're not talk, brother. Shut up, you get slapped with. That's what'll happen. That's all that's going to happen. People will basically murk people. And I'm saying these words because those who understand. The algorithm doesn't have to understand, but we know how this works. People get done out, deleted in this game, and that is the truth. And that is in the music industry. We don't even have to go into gangsterism because we're not even taking that dark path. I'm not going to talk about that dark path because there is a dark path people can go down, and whether I agree with a path somebody goes down, it's up to me whether I like it or not, what they do. I just don't have to follow them. That is the moral of a lot of what goes on in the music industry, especially with the P. Diddy. Just don't follow people based on what you perceive that they're doing. Some people will do it unwittingly. And with P. Diddy, I think there has been some level of him believing that what he was doing was making him somehow untouchable, which happens when a large amount of money is given to you. And we spoke about this. We spoke about creating monsters. When you give somebody, you inflate somebody's ego, you give them money, you then give them attention, adulation. They create power. This is a power structure that's created not only in the music industry, it's created in the sports world, it's created in politics particularly, because they have a lot more power and are able to change people's destiny. This is what the power really then becomes about. They want to change their own destiny. And if that means people become dispensable, that's the word they use in business. It's called you are all dispensable. We are all dispensable. You are all dispensable. We are all dispensable. You are all dispensable. We are all dispensable. You are all dispensable. You are all dispensable. We are all dispensable. But not me. We're all going to say that. Not me. We're not dispensable. You must put a value on yourself, and it should be no inflated monetary value. Especially if you're in the music industry, because there are people will put those figures in front of you, and before you know it, you're saying, yeah, but you don't even know why you're saying yes. And I could be really sort of grimy and talk this in a grimy way because I know the grimy stuff, but I only know it because I know human nature and I've seen that in the criminal world. Yes, I got into trouble myself as a young person growing up. Got into a lot of fights. So I understand the griminess of the world. The world is a very grimy place. Don't think because I speak spooky that you can just walk up to me and say, nah, then mate. Yeah, believe you me, that's what will happen. I'm not. I'm a public person and I don't do things stupid in public. But I've got a sick chip, like a lot of you out there. I'm gonna put it that way. I've got a really sick person. I do not like to be bullied. It's not a weakness. It's just the truth. Yeah. Yeah, I hold my weight. I hold my weight well. So, yeah, this has always led me to be able to go down paths that other people wouldn't normally go down. Not as a big-headed person or as a stupid, unwitting victim. Because when things happen to you, you have to be open to take your responsibility. This is what I learned in life. So everything I've done that's wrong, I take responsibility for it. And every decision I made in the music industry, I take full responsibility. Not to sign certain deals, not to work in certain environments, not to accept certain backhanders, not to bow. That's what we called it. We weren't gonna bow. These words are being sort of swept under the carpet. You're a bow cat. You're this, you're stomite, yeah. We used to say these words. Censorship came into the music industry. So there's certain things we understand, and that's why I'm saying this before I talk about the history fully. I have to get all that out of the way that yes, we used to listen to words of, Buju Banton song, and I still play it to this day because it's not inciting violence. It doesn't incite. Music does not incite. Politicians can incite if that's the case. And this is where, there's always been an argument between music and the spiritual world. In the 60s, in the 70s, a lot of the Rasta music was about Babylon, burning down Babylon, repatriation out of Babylon, all the years of oppression. People don't want to talk about that. That is what it was about. So the new reggae that you're hearing now and the revival that you're hearing now, if it doesn't play that, it's not really representing what was being played in the 70s or in the 60s or even in the 80s or to bumbo clot in the 90s. Because all of this stuff was played in the 90s, they can't play it now. They don't. If those artists, some of them are dead. Some of them mad out. Some of them are being mashed up. Just completely annihilated by, this and that that's gone on within the industry. So the music we're hearing now does not replicate back some of the stuff from the 90s. They're leaving out a lot of stuff. They're leaving out a lot of relevant stuff. The stuff from the 80s, they're leaving out. The stuff from the 70s, they're leaving out. Artists, they're leaving out who are more relevant than the artists they are playing now. Where's Little John? Where's Peter Metro? Why are these people not being played? Why are we not hearing about these people? Why are people not praising these people? Yeah, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the music was different from what we're listening to now. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to play back some of the stuff that I've still got on recording from then. And I know a lot of this stuff doesn't get played. A lot of people don't talk about. They don't talk about Jesse. They don't talk about Desi D. Gaddy knows. Gaddy, one of my great brethren, when I first went out at a 15-year-old, it was turn-ups that it was running the city, the whole city. Everybody went to turn-ups on a Tuesday night. And it was Daddy Gaddy and Jesse who I went to watch as a young 15-year-old with my brethren, Mick Robinson, sadly passed away, R.I.P. And these were the first time of me actually ever going out. I was a 15-year-old. It was shock horror 15-year-old. But I was a boy. I wasn't a girl. I was a boy. And you have 15-year-olds going out now anyway. They're at pubs. They're outside pubs. So anyway, we're not gonna compare. But I'm just gonna compare to how I started out and who I looked up to was Gaddy and Jesse. No word of a lie. These guys were well known throughout the city for what they did. People listened to them. About the history, I have to talk about these guys because that's who I looked up to. Jesse, Gaddy, Trojan sound. My brother, his sound. Raymond, their sound. Mick, that's who I looked up to. These are the people I looked up to. Chris, I looked up to these because they were my older brothers. And my family, I always respected what they did and what they listened to. Little John was always being played. So it was always fun. It was always fun around there. My friends who would come from different areas wanted just to come around where we were playing because we had a big area to play in, a big backyard, plus there was a garage around the back. We used to play football, hide and seek, and climbing walls till we broke it down. We were rough and tumble youths. We even get a stone licked in my head. I probably bawled at the time, but me and my friend was playing. We never wanted the things. I was always one of those. I probably never saw it, but I was always getting to my little bits of scrapes. You know, I remember burning my leg on the iron as a kid, having shorts on, and I would just suddenly until I just realised, what? Something's on fire. And that's what you realise as a kid, that you can get hurt just doing things as kids do. So this story is about that, and it is about how I started out in the music, but it's also going to have little bits of stupidity that kids do, funny stories, because that is what makes life. That's the fabric of life, that you can look back and hopefully laugh at these things. And we can look back at what was created in Sheffield, and hopefully we look back at it with a smile. So I'm not just going to put it into one episode talking about Music in the Sun, because it happened in the 90s and I'm still talking about the 80s. Can you Adam and Eve it? Yeah, this is what a time lapse can do for you. We can jump back and forward because we have this technology, we have the mind, we still have the faculties, and we talk about as much wonderful things and as much things that amaze us that we can. We're going to talk about some of the new artists that I've been seeing out there, that have been introduced to me. I'm not professing that I'm going to be the person who's going to always find the brilliant next artist, but I know I've had the ability to establish other people in the industry. A lot of people, I've seen them from the very early days. I've seen Shabba Ranks from the early days when he first started, and I had to be part of that show. Ninja Man, I was part of that show. A lot of great artists. Frankie Paul, worked with all these people. Beres Hammond, Desi D, worked with these great artists, great voice. And I'm going to continue to work with people like this. Shazlin, great voice. Anita, great voice. Ruben Eining, KC Dunn. I've got to continue working with these people. I've got to big up people who I've worked with in the past. Siobhan Gallagher, great artist, doing great things. Got to big up Omar Barrett, another great artist, hearing a lot of new stuff from these people. I've got to big up Bobby Crystal, hearing a lot of stuff from Bobby Crystal out in Jamaica, a lot of stuff from Crazy Don, a lot of stuff from KDK. These are artists I've worked with. I've been blessed enough to work with so many great artists, with so many great bands. Eyewitness Band, Stepping Razor Band, that I got to go on television with those guys. It was great, it was wonderful. But I also know that there's other sides of the industry. You know, people will dislike you even though when they work with you. This is part of the industry as well. We can't expect that everybody's going to like everything about, especially when we're all vying for the attention of this big screen and for recognition in the industry. And this is sometimes happens. You find that producers will make artists sign deals. You know, they'll give you a rhythm track and say, yeah, you can use it, but soon as that track gets too much popularity, that producer then is changing his mind. This is part of the contractual obligations that we have, or we try to have agreements. We have gentleman agreements that were once held a lot more weight. They don't hold as much weight, so it's good to have things in writing. It's particularly when you're dealing with copyright of material and of your own vocals, or you're taking part in something that you didn't particularly write or you don't own the rights of. It can be anything, especially in the years of publication and litigation that can go on due to that. If you put anything out there and it's liable, people can take you to court. If you put something out there that doesn't belong to you, somebody could sue you. You know, it's really that serious. But at the same time, we're having fun here. We're trying to have fun. So, you know, we take certain things serious and we take our life serious. We take other things serious. You know, sticks and stones. People have said things about me. People say things to me. I usually don't take it badly. And especially on here, this is a platform that's supposed to be rich with commentary and rich with opinions. So I'm going to try and include some of that. Some of the issues that we're going to talk about: mental health, poverty, racism, sexism, rape, mental abuse, physical abuse. We're going to try and talk about these things in the best possible way and in a more sensitive possible way. We're going to talk about the occult. We can talk about spiritualism. We can talk about this through my journey, about things I've encountered. I'm not going to come here and say I believe this or I believe that. That's up to you what you want to infer. You think I'm inferring. If you think I'm inferring something, then you're inferring that I'm inferring. Let's leave it as simple as that, because I'm a straight talking person, but at the same time, legalities, I don't think that internet is sort of immune to people coming on and ranting. I try not to rant, you know what I mean, because I just don't think it sounds good, and if I do, I hope I've got the presence of mind to look at it before I put that out, because remember, once you press send, it's out into the open. Motherfucker, so whatever you're saying, you got to know what you're saying. So yeah, make this thing make sense, you know what I mean? Make your last word mean something, because it could be your last word. And that's why this program is dedicated, as I said, to all those who have passed away, with all those who are still present, who are no longer able to carry on working. I'm able to work. We all have health issues that we worry about, and the Apex training, some of the research that we're trying to do is trying to highlight some of these things as well. We're trying to look at the whole 50 something plus. That is the age I'm at, so aiming this demographic at. I'm eternally grateful for whatever reason people watch it into this period of time. Got a big up Guiding Store record shop, because that's where I met a great guy himself, Mike Maverick, from Nottingham, originally done great things in his own city, and come to Sheffield through Derek Godfather, another person again who I've got to send a lot of respect out to, and to Cyrus. They introduced me to a lot of the Midlands music scene people, who include Apache Indian, of all people, who at that time was unknown to anybody in any of the UK. Look up Apache Indian, who he is now, and you'll doubt you're going to find many artists to have reached his level in the short space of time that he did. But I knew these guys when they had nothing. They were just doing dub plates. Cyrus will tell you this. Godfather will tell you this. Byron will tell you this himself. We introduced to them through Maverick and his entourage, and this was the person who took me to a place in Nottingham called Marcus Garvey to do my first ever recording. He'd heard me voicing on the sound system that I was then elevated to be an MC on Trojan Sound in Pinkies, of all places, and Maverick wanted me to record on a rhythm track he had. It was a very good rhythm tracks, and yes, I went to record, and imagine being in a big size studio, because Marcus Garvey's studio was a big studio at that time. Desk is, this is where the engineer sits and listens as the speaker's pointing towards them, and they do the recording there. Then afterwards, when you've done all your bits, whether you're a guitarist or a vocalist, they then mix this afterwards. There's a lot of processing that has to go on. But as I said, my part in it was to go and record on this album. And I learned a lot about recording, because as I said, I never recorded properly in a studio before. This was the first time and I'm going to leave it to the next episode of this series to explain to you what happened during that recording. What I recorded.